At 30, I was living a life many envied, fit, independent, and doing what I loved as a fitness trainer. But society had other plans for me. "When are you settling down?" echoed in every family gathering. A relentless reminder that my biological clock was ticking louder than my dumbbells clanged at the gym. Then Jake walked into my world like a storm I didn't see coming. His confidence was magnetic. His piercing gaze made me feel both exposed and intrigued. That first day, he strode into the gym with an air of mystery, asking about killer moves while sizing me up. Not just physically, but emotionally. Our connection grew quickly, almost too perfectly. He was charming, funny, yet oddly evasive whenever I asked about his family. There were moments when his laughter would fade, mid-sentence replaced by a shadow I couldn't quite name. Something about him felt off. Still, I found myself drawn to him, craving his presence even as doubt whispered warnings in my ear. Was it love or desperation? The pressure from my family to find the one clouded my judgment, making me overlook the cracks beneath Jake's polished surface. Little did I know, this man wasn't just a whirlwind romance, he was the calm before the chaos. Jake's proposal came on a crisp autumn evening, the kind of night where the air feels electric and possibilities seem endless. We had just finished dinner at his favorite Italian spot, his mother's sauce. Of course, and he led me to a quiet park bench overlooking the city lights. For a moment, everything felt perfect. Then he turned to me, took my hands in his, and said, "Emily, you're the only one who can help me hold this family together. You'll do that for me, right?" His words were wrapped in romance but carried an undertone I couldn't ignore. Desperation? I hesitated, the flicker of doubt from earlier days creeping back into my mind. Was this love or obligation? But before I could process it fully, Jake dropped to one knee, pulling out a modest ring. The gesture was sweet, almost cinematic, and my heart raced despite the nagging voice warning me to slow down. "Yes," I whispered, swept up in the moment, convincing myself that love would conquer all the cracks beneath the surface. After the wedding, reality hit like a freight train. Jake's restaurant, which he'd always described as thriving, was drowning in debt. It wasn't until we moved into his mom's house that I realized how dire things truly were. One afternoon, while sorting through some papers Jake had left on the dining table, I stumbled upon overdue bills and loan documents, mountains of them. My stomach churned as the pieces fell into place. The constant stress about money, the late-night calls Jake received at the gym, the way Anna and Sophia scrutinized every purchase I made, it all made sense now. They weren't just critical, they were terrified. And somehow, without realizing it, I had become their financial lifeline. When I confronted Jake, his response was laced with guilt and deflection. "It's temporary, Em," he promised, avoiding my eyes. "Once the restaurant picks up, we'll be fine." But deep down, I knew better. This wasn't temporary, it was a trap I hadn't seen coming. Yet, bound by vows and hope, I stayed silent, burying my unease under layers of denial. Living with Jake's family wasn't just uncomfortable, it was a daily battle for survival. From the moment I moved in, Anna and Sophia made it clear that I didn't belong. Their disdain wasn't subtle. It was loud, unapologetic, and relentless. They treated me like an outsider, someone who had invaded their sacred space. Every effort I made to fit in was met with ridicule. Every attempt at bonding twisted into another opportunity to humiliate me. It started smaller, sarcastic comment here, a dismissive glance there, but soon escalated into outright cruelty. One evening during a family dinner meant to celebrate Sophia's promotion at work, she turned to me with a smirk. "So, Emily," she began, her voice dripping with mockery, "how's the fitness guru holding up? Still managing to keep those weights in check while juggling your domestic duties?" The room fell silent except for the sound of forks scraping against plates. I forced a smile, swallowing the lump in my throat. "Doing my best," I replied, hoping to diffuse the tension. But Sophia wasn't done. "Your best? Really? Because from what I've seen, your best isn't cutting it." Her words stung, but I refused to give her the satisfaction of seeing me crumble. The worst moments always happened around food. Cooking in Anna's house was like walking through a minefield. Italian cuisine wasn't just a meal, it was a religion, and Anna's recipes were gospel. When I tried to cook pasta carbonara using her recipe, disaster struck. The sauce burned, sticking stubbornly to the bottom of the pan. As I plated the dish, my hands trembling slightly, Sophia appeared in the doorway, arms crossed. "Is that supposed to be dinner?" she asked, her tone laced with disbelief. Before I could respond, she leaned closer, inspecting the plate as if it were evidence of a crime. "If Mom knew you cooked like this, she'd probably throw you out herself. Honestly, this looks like something the dog wouldn't even eat." Her laughter echoed through the kitchen, joined reluctantly by Anna's chuckles. Jake sat quietly, avoiding eye contact, his silence amplifying the humiliation. I clenched my fists under the table, forcing myself to stay composed. "I'm still learning," I said softly, though my voice wavered. Sophia rolled her eyes. Learning? You've been here for months, Emily. At this rate, you'll never get it right. But the insults weren't confined to the walls of the house. During a neighborhood barbecue, Anna introduced me to some neighbors with a backhanded compliment. "This is Jake's wife, Emily," she said, her tone overly sweet. "She's a fitness trainer, though I doubt she has time to teach anyone anything these days, given how much she struggles with basic household tasks." The women exchanged polite smiles, but I could see the judgment in their eyes. Later, Sophia took things further, loudly referring to me as that useless gym girl within earshot of everyone. My face burned with shame, but I bit my tongue, reminding myself that arguing would only make things worse. Even simple chores became battlegrounds. Laundry day was particularly brutal. One afternoon, as I folded clothes in the living room, Sophia walked in and immediately criticized my technique. "You call that folding? These shirts look like they've been stuffed into a suitcase." She grabbed a shirt from the pile and refolded it with exaggerated precision. "Here, let me show you how it's done." Her condescending tone grated on my nerves, but I held my ground. "Thanks for the tip," I muttered, though my clenched jaw betrayed my frustration. What hurt most was Jake's indifference. He rarely intervened when his mother and sister attacked me, choosing instead to retreat into himself. Once, after a particularly harsh critique of my cooking, I confronted him privately. "Why don't you ever stand up for me?" I asked, my voice trembling with emotion. He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Emily, please. It's not worth fighting over. Just try to ignore them." His words felt like a betrayal, a confirmation that he valued their approval more than my dignity. Each insult, each cruel remark chipped away at my confidence, leaving me feeling isolated and powerless. Yet, despite the constant barrage of negativity, I refused to let them break me completely. Deep down, I clung to the hope that things would improve, that maybe one day they'd see me as more than just an intruder. But as the days turned into weeks, that hope grew dimmer, overshadowed by the reality of their relentless hostility. Pregnancy should have been a time of joy, but for me, it became another battlefield in the war. I was fighting with Jake's family. From the moment I started showing, Anna and Sophia treated my condition not as a miracle of life, but as an inconvenience, a disruption to their routines, and an excuse to pile more guilt onto my already heavy shoulders. "Don't think being pregnant gives you a free pass to slack off," Anna snapped one afternoon as I struggled to carry groceries into the house. Her voice dripped with disdain. "Back in my day, we worked ourselves to the bone through all 9 months without complaining." Her words stung, not because they were true, but because they revealed how little she valued me. To her, I wasn't a person carrying a new life. I was just another burden on the household. The chores didn't stop, neither did the criticism. Every task I completed was met with scrutiny, every effort dismissed as inadequate. One evening, after spending hours folding laundry while my back ached from the extra weight, Sophia walked in and sneered, "You're doing it wrong again. These aren't even close to how Mom taught us." Honestly, Emily, are you sure you're cut out for this whole mother thing? But nothing prepared me for the night the cramps hit. It was late, and the house was quiet except for the faint hum of the refrigerator. I woke up suddenly, pain gripping my abdomen like a vice. My breaths came in shallow gasps as I tried to call out for help, but no one came. Jake was away at the restaurant, as usual, and Anna and Sophia were fast asleep, oblivious or perhaps indifferent to my cries. Crawling to the phone felt like scaling a mountain, each movement sending fresh waves of agony through my body. When I finally managed to dial for an ambulance, tears streamed down my face, not just from the physical pain, but from the crushing realization that I was utterly alone. At the hospital, the doctor confirmed it was severe muscle spasms brought on by overexertion. "You need to rest," he advised sternly. "Your body can't handle this kind of stress, especially now." But resting wasn't an option in Anna's house. The next morning when I returned home, Anna greeted me with a disapproving glare. "Well, that was quite the dramatic display last night," she said, her tone laced with mockery. "I hope you've learned your lesson about pushing yourself too hard. We can't afford any more disruptions around here." As the months passed, the insults grew worse. My changing body became a target for their ridicule. One day, as I sat at the dinner table eating a second helping of pasta to nourish myself and the baby, Anna laughed cruelly. "Look at her eat. Is she feeding a child or an entire army?" Sophia chimed in, mimicking the sound of a cow mooing under her breath. The sound sliced through me, leaving me paralyzed with humiliation. They saw me not as a human being, but as a utility, a walking ATM and milk machine whose sole purpose was to serve them. The emotional toll was unbearable. Each barbed comment chipped away at what little self-worth I had left. I began to dread stepping into the kitchen, knowing that whatever I cooked would be mocked. Even something as simple as making toast could spark a torrent of criticism. "Is this supposed to be edible?" Sophia once asked, holding up a slice of slightly burnt bread. "If I didn't know better, I'd say you were trying to poison us." Jake's absence only amplified the isolation. When I tried to talk to him about how his family treated me, he brushed it off. Mom and Sophia don't mean anything by it, he insisted. They're just stressed. Try to ignore them. His dismissive attitude made me feel invisible, as though my pain didn't matter. By the time Alex was born, I had gained significant weta, natural part of pregnancy, but it became yet another weapon they used against me. She looks ridiculous, Sophia muttered loud enough for me to hear as I nursed my newborn son in the living room. How does Jake stand looking at her? Their laughter echoed through the house, sharp and cutting, reducing me to tears. In those moments I felt less than humana, mere vessel for their grandson, unworthy of respect or kindness. Desperation drove me to seek solace in something entirely my own, a YouTube channel and Instagram page dedicated to fitness, specifically for busy moms like me. It wasn't just about escaping the toxic environment at home. It was about reclaiming a piece of myself that had been buried under years of criticism and neglect. One morning, while Jake was at the restaurant and Sophia was out shopping, I set up my old camera in the cramped guest room we used as storage. "I'm doing this," I muttered to myself, adjusting the angle awkwardly. The first few videos were clumsy, my commentary stilted, my movements hesitant. I posted them anyway, hoping anyone, would find value in what I shared. The comments rolled in quickly, but they weren't kind. "Who even watches these cheap videos?" one user sneered. Another wrote, "You call this professional? Looks like a bad hobby." Each negative remark felt like a punch to the gut, but instead of letting them crush me, I used them as fuel. I spent hours watching tutorials on lighting, editing, and framing. Slowly, my videos improved, and so did the feedback. But the real test came when Sophia discovered me filming. She stormed into the room, her eyes blazing with disdain. "What the hell are you doing?" she snapped, glaring at the camera. Before I could respond, she cranked up the volume on the stereo, blasting music loud enough to drown out my voice. I paused mid-sentence, frustration bubbling over. For a moment, I considered giving up, letting her win yet again. But then an idea struck me. Instead of stopping, I turned the disruption into content. "Hey everyone," I said, forcing a smile despite the chaos behind me. "Today's lesson is about perseverance. Life might throw obstacles your way like loud music or unsupportive people, but don't let them stop you. Keep going because your dreams are worth fighting for." I hit stop on the recording, my heart pounding not from anger but from pride. That video went viral, resonating with women who saw themselves in my struggle. Comments poured in, thanking me for speaking their truth. As my following grew, so did my confidence. Brands started reaching out, offering free products to feature in my videos. Then came the sponsored posts, each one bringing in more money than I'd ever imagined. For the first time, I felt a sense of control, not just financially, but emotionally. Yet, Anna and Sophia remained oblivious. "She does nothing but prance around making silly videos," Anna scoffed during dinner one night. Sophia chimed in, rolling her eyes. "If she thinks she's some kind of star, she's delusional." Their words no longer hurt. They fueled my determination. By the time Jake noticed, I was already pulling in significant income. He glanced at my phone screen where notifications buzzed nonstop. "That's great, Emily," he said distractedly, his mind still on the restaurant's troubles. "Just keep it quiet, okay? Mom and Sophia don't need to know." His indifference only solidified my resolve. This wasn't just a side project anymore, it was my lifeline. Every time I handed over money to Jake, I told myself it was an investment in our future, a way to mend the fractures in his family and perhaps earn their respect. But with each transfer, the cracks only widened. The more I gave, the more they expected, until my financial support became as routine as breathing. One evening, after sending another $2,000 to cover household expenses, I decided to broach the topic of scaling back. "Jake," I began hesitantly during dinner, "maybe we should start thinking about cutting costs around here. You know, for stability." Anna's fork clattered against her plate, drawing everyone's attention. Her eyes narrowed as she leaned forward, her voice icy. "Cut costs? Emily, your contributions are hardly noticeable compared to what you get from a roof over your head, food on the table, and a place for that child of yours." Sophia smirked, chiming in with her usual venom. "Yeah, maybe if you spent less time making those silly videos and more time contributing properly, we wouldn't need your charity." Their words hit like a sledgehammer, shattering whatever fragile hope I still clung to. It wasn't gratitude, they felt it was entitlement. To them, I wasn't a person. I was a walking ATM, dispensing cash whenever they needed it. That night, as I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, their laughter from earlier echoed in my mind. They saw me as nothing more than a source of income, blind to the sacrifices I made to keep this sinking ship afloat. Things escalated when Jake approached me again, his tone pleading but tinged with desperation. "Emily, the restaurant needs another injection, just $5,000 this month. It'll turn things around, I promise." His eyes darted away as he spoke, unable to meet mine. For a moment, anger surged within me. How could he ask for more when I'd already given so much? Yet, looking at him, the exhaustion etched into his face, sigh caved. After all, he was still the father of my son, and despite everything I wanted to believe he could change, but the resentment festered. Each dollar I sent felt like a betrayal of myself, a piece of my soul slipping through my fingers. One afternoon, while balancing my YouTube earnings spreadsheet, Sophia barged into the room, her arms crossed. Still counting your coins, huh? Must be nice to have spare cash lying around while the rest of us struggle. Her words dripped with sarcasm, but beneath them lay something uglier. Greed. She didn't care about my hard work or creativity. She cared only about what I could provide. The breaking point came when Anna cornered me in the kitchen. "You know, Emily," she said, her voice deceptively sweet, "if you really cared about this family, you'd stop questioning where your money goes. We've taken care of you, haven't we?" Her smile was razor sharp, a reminder that my presence here was conditional, dependent on how much I could give. In that moment, clarity struck me like lightning. I wasn't part of their family. I never had been. I was merely a resource to exploit until there was nothing left. The final straw came when Sophia announced her pregnancy. "We'll need more space for the baby," she declared one evening, her tone leaving no room for negotiation. Anna quickly chimed in, her voice sharp and dismissive. "Emily and her son are taking up too much room. They don't contribute anything meaningful, just those useless videos of hers." The words stung, but what hurt more was the cold calculation behind them. They weren't just asking me to leave. They were erasing every sacrifice I'd made for this family. Jake had been absent for weeks, off on one of his supposed business trips, oblivious to the storm brewing at home. When he left, he kissed me and our son goodbye as if nothing were amiss, leaving me to face the fallout alone. That day, after picking up Alex from school, we returned home to find our belongings piled outside in the pouring rain. Suitcases, clothes, toys, everything that defined our life here was dumped unceremoniously on the curb. My heart sank as I rang the doorbell, hoping against hope that this was some cruel misunderstanding. Anna opened the door, just a crack, her expression icy. "You need to go," she said flatly, her voice devoid of any humanity. "Find somewhere else to stay." I stared at her, incredulous. "What about Jake? What will I tell him?" I demanded, my voice trembling with panic and anger. Sophia appeared behind her, smirking. "Tell him whatever you want. He's not here to care, is he?" Her laughter cut through me like a knife, sharp and merciless. I tried calling Jake, but my calls went unanswered, each ring echoing hollowly in the silence of the storm. With no other option, I gathered Alex close and began loading our soaked belongings into a taxi. Standing there in the rain, clutching my son tightly, I felt the weight of my mistakes crash down on me. All those years of pouring money, time, and energy into a family that never loved me, back hit all seemed so futile now. Alex looked up at me, his small face streaked with rain and tears. "Mommy, why are we outside?" he asked, his voice trembling. I forced a smile, though my own tears mingled with the rain. "It's okay, sweetheart. We're going to be fine." But inside, I was breaking. This wasn't just an eviction, it was a reckoning. In that moment, I realized how much I'd lost, not just my dignity, but years of my life spent trying to please people who would never see me as family. The truth hit me like a freight train, but not in the way I expected. It wasn't Jake's absence or his family's cruelty that finally broke me, it was the cold, undeniable evidence of his betrayal. One evening, as Alex slept soundly in the next room, my phone buzzed with an unfamiliar notification. A message from Sophia. "Thought you might want to see what your beloved husband has been up to?" Attached was a link to a social media page filled with photos of Jake, photos that showed him laughing, dining, and strolling on the beach with another woman. The timestamps confirmed it. He wasn't on any urgent business trip. He was living a double life, funded by my money. For a moment I sat frozen, the phone slipping slightly in my trembling hands. My chest tightened, anger bubbling beneath the surface. But I didn't cry. I didn't scream. Instead, something inside me shifted. A quiet resolve replaced the storm of emotions. This wasn't just about Jake anymore. It was about reclaiming my dignity, my life, and my future. I opened a new tab and began researching divorce lawyers, my fingers moving with precision despite the chaos in my mind. By morning, I had drafted a plan: gather evidence, prepare legal documents, and take back everything they had taken for granted. When Sophia's mocking text arrived the next day, "Congratulations, you finally see your husband for who he really is," I replied with icy calm. "Thank you for helping me open my eyes." Her words no longer had power over me. Armed with screenshots of Jake's affair and financial records proving my contributions to the household, I felt a strength I hadn't known before. For years I had been their puppet, pulling strings to keep their fragile world intact. Now, I was cutting those strings one decisive action at a time. The confrontation came sooner than expected. Jake called repeatedly, his voice laced with desperation. Emily, where are you? We need to talk about the bills and the restaurant. His words made my blood boil, but I kept my tone neutral. Sure, Jake, let's meet tomorrow. Hanging up, I felt a surge of determination. Tomorrow wouldn't just be a meeting, it would be the beginning of my liberation. The final confrontation took place in Anna's living room, the same space where I had endured years of humiliation and disdain. Jake sat nervously on the edge of the couch, his face pale as I placed the divorce papers in front of him. Anna and Sophia stood nearby, their arms crossed, smirking as if this were just another one of my dramatic stunts. What is this nonsense? Anna snapped, glaring at me. You think you can just walk out after everything we've done for you? I didn't flinch. Instead, I met her gaze with a calmness that surprised even myself. Actually, yes, I replied, my voice steady. And while we're at it, let's talk about what I've done for all of you. I pulled out a detailed list of every appliance, piece of furniture, and household item I had purchased over the years. Things they had taken for granted. Their smirks faltered as realization dawned. Sophia was the first to react, her tone laced with venom. So what? You're taking back a few things. That doesn't change the fact that Jake will get alimony from you. She smirked triumphantly, clearly thinking she'd won. But I wasn't finished. Oh, Sophia, I said, letting my words hang in the air. Jake won't be getting a cent. Not when I have proof of his affair. I slid my phone across the table, the photos of Jake with another woman glaring up at them. The room fell silent except for Anna's sharp intake of breath. As movers began hauling away the refrigerator, washing machine, and even the flat-screen TV I had bought, Anna's composure crumbled. She dropped to her knees, tears streaming down her face. Please, Emily, we can't live without these things. Her voice cracked with desperation. For a moment, I felt a flicker of pity, but then I remembered every insult, every cruel remark, every time they treated me like nothing more than a cash cow. I smiled, but it wasn't warm, it was cold, calculated. You'll figure it out, I said softly. After all, you've been doing just fine until now. It's time you learned to live the way I did, with nothing. Sophia lunged toward me, her face twisted with rage. You selfish witch, how dare you do this to us? I didn't respond. Instead, I watched as the movers carried out the last of the items, leaving the house eerily empty. Jake, who had remained silent throughout the ordeal, finally spoke. Emily, please, we can work this out. His voice was weak, pleading. But I shook my head. No, Jake, this isn't about working things out. It's about accountability for all of you. As I walked out the door, I glanced back one last time. Anna and Sophia clung to each other, their faces masks of disbelief and despair. They had reaped what they sowed, and for the first time in years I felt truly free. Jake's restaurant, once a symbol of his family's pride, crumbled under the weight of its debts. Without my financial support, it was only a matter of time before the business collapsed. The house they had taken for granted, furnished with my money, was sold to cover their mounting debts. Anna and Sophia, stripped of their luxuries, were forced into a cramped apartment, their days filled with bitter arguments and regret. Meanwhile, Alex and I settled into a cozy rental that felt more like home than any place I'd ever lived. My YouTube channel flourished, inspiring thousands of women who saw themselves in my journey. I launched online fitness courses tailored for postpartum mothers, helping them reclaim their strength and confidence. Every morning, as sunlight streamed through our windows and Alex's laughter echoed through the halls, I felt a profound sense of peace. We had survived the storm, and now we were thriving. That evening, as Alex slept soundly in the next room, I sat at my desk and opened my laptop. My fingers hovered over the keyboard for a moment before I began typing. Life will test you, I wrote, the words flowing effortlessly. It will push you to your limits, make you question your worth, and force you to confront your darkest fears. But remember this, only by facing those challenges can you discover your true strength. I paused, reflecting on everything I'd been through, the years of sacrifice, the betrayal, the moments when I felt utterly broken. Yet here I was, stronger than ever, with a life full of purpose and love. I added one final line before posting. Don't fear the storms of life. It's in those storms that we find our light. The post went viral overnight, resonating deeply with women who had faced similar struggles. Messages poured in from mothers, wives, and daughters, sharing their stories of resilience and gratitude. You've given me hope, one woman wrote. Thank you for reminding me that I'm not alone. Reading those words, I realized my journey wasn't just about survival. It was about inspiring others to rise above their pain and reclaim their lives.